live shot of the University Avenue Courthouse. It's the first full day of deliberations for the trial of Umar Zameer, the man accused of killing a Toronto police officer. We'll tell you the questions the jury has been asking today.
65,000 hospital workers in Ontario will receive a 6% wage increase over the next 2 years after a new deal was reached between the unions and the Ontario Hospital Association.
And the Leafs are getting ready to take on the Bruins in Boston tomorrow in Game 1 of Round 1 of the NHL playoffs. We'll tell you how the city is getting ready.
Good afternoon and welcome to CP24 Live at noon. I'm Bakari Savage.
And I'm Lena Latifat. Thanks so much for joining us. The jury in the Umar Zameer murder trial is continuing to deliberate for its first full day.
And CP24's Courtney Hills continue our live coverage from the University Avenue Courthouse. Okay, Courtney, we understand the jury did have some questions, right?
They did. Yesterday, the deliberations began at around 5:30, so pretty late in the day. Shortly after, the jury coming forward with a question, the judge addressing some of those questions first thing this morning, really surrounding the big question of this trial, whether Umar Zameer was aware that Detective Constable Jeffrey Northrup was an officer when he approached their vehicle in that underground parking garage in July of 2021. I'll share with you now the questions that was read aloud within the court behind me here. The jury asking, did Zameer know there was a risk Northrup was a cop and proceeded despite that? Also, was Zameer aware there were indications Northrup was a police officer but chose to ignore them? As I say, the big question here, whether Zameer was aware that Northrup was an officer. The Crown has argued over the last 5 weeks as part of this trial that Zameer would have been aware, saying that Northrup and his partner yelled that they were police officers when they approached the vehicle, also that they both had their badges around their necks. What we've heard from the defense, the lawyers representing Umar Zameer, saying this was just a tragic accident and that their client Zameer did not know they were police officers when he was approached. They say he felt that he was under threat and he was just trying to get himself and his family to safety. So what is happening here at the University Avenue Courthouse behind me? The deliberations continue. Again, that question coming forward. We're just waiting to see if there will be any developments here later today. But these jurors have a lot to consider, a lot of evidence to consider over the last 5 weeks. And they have 4 possible verdicts here: first-degree murder, second-degree murder, manslaughter, or not guilty of any of the charges. And in order for the jury to land on first or second degree murder, they would have to believe beyond a reasonable doubt that Zameer knew that Northrup was a police officer. We're standing by, guys. We are certainly watching to see if there will be any developments, any further questions for the judge, or perhaps a verdict in this case that so many people are watching very closely. Over to you.
Yeah, for now, deliberations continue. Courtney Hills live at the University Avenue Courthouse. Thank you, Courtney. A warning now, some viewers may find the following video disturbing.
Yeah, York Regional Police, they've released a video of multiple arrests and a takedown of carjacking suspects.
The takedown happened on April 13th when York Regional Police located a stolen Acura with 3 suspects inside. Officers used flashbangs, a distraction device that produces a flash of light and loud noises. The suspects attempted to flee on foot, tossing a loaded firearm. Police say that Acura had been used as a getaway car in a previous violent carjacking attempt in York Region, as well as in a carjacking in Toronto in which suspects were charged. 18-year-old Pocher Williams and 2 teen boys are facing a number of firearm and property offenses.
And Toronto police are asking for your help in locating a missing teenager. Pachika was last seen yesterday on the Western Road and Shepherd Avenue West area. The 15-year-old was wearing a black and gold Toronto Raptors OVO long-sleeve shirt, which also had black and glitter on the back. The individual is described as being 5'9" with long dreadlock hair and a medium build. Anyone with information, please contact police or Crime Stoppers.
A region in central Iran was targeted by an apparent drone strike amid heightened tensions with Israel last night.
And for the latest, we're joined live right now by CTV's Scott Hurst. Scott?
Bakari and Lena, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres is calling on both sides to stop the retaliation, saying it is high time to end the bloody cycle of retaliation. This as Iran appears to be downplaying the severity of the attack, saying it intercepted at least 3 drones. Ultimately, though, a potentially dangerous escalation in a widening Middle East conflict as Israel reportedly striking Iran in a drone attack overnight in what appears to be a retaliatory strike after weeks of escalating tension between the two countries. Iranian state media reporting explosions near the central city of Isfahan, which is home to a large air base, a major missile production complex, and several nuclear facilities as well. We're getting preliminary reaction from G7 foreign ministers. The United States reportedly got last-minute information about the attack from Israel, but U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is denying any U.S. involvement. Here's more from the Secretary of State.
I'm not going to speak to that, except to say that the United States has not been involved in any offensive operations. What we're focused on, what the G7 is focused on, and again, it's reflected in our statement and in our conversation, is our work to de-escalate tensions, to de-escalate from any potential conflict.
Canadian Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly also at that G7 foreign ministers meeting, and she had this to say on social media, saying, in the light of strikes reported in Iran and following our meeting, I join my G7 colleagues in urging all parties to work to prevent further escalation. Now, this latest attack comes less than a week after Iran launched hundreds of missiles and drones at Israel in retaliation for an Israeli airstrike on its diplomatic compound in Syria. Now, Bakari and Lena, if it wasn't already, this leaves the region bracing for further escalation after, of course, months of fighting in Gaza.
All right, our Scott Hurst working on this developing story out of the Middle East. Thanks so much, Scott.
Thanks,
Closer
Lena.
to home, a national Muslim advocacy group is urging the Speaker of Ontario's legislature to reverse a ban on people wearing keffiyehs at Queen's Park.
Yeah, the National Council of Canadian Muslims says that the restriction on the scarves, it's a sign that Palestinian identity is being attacked. The keffiyeh is worn in Arab cultures, and it's come to symbolize solidarity with Palestinians. Speaker Ted Arnott issued the ban because he claims that the scarves are worn to make a political statement. Queen's Park has a rule that members can't use props or accessories to express political sentiments.
Well, the latest installment of the Canada Child Benefit payments are landing in the pockets of eligible families today. The monthly payments are based on a family's net income and how many children they have. The federal government is meant to assist low and middle income families. Applicants can receive up to $619 a month for children younger than 6 and up to $522 for kids between 6 and 17. The benefit was recently increased to keep up with inflation and the cost of living. The next payment date that is set for May 17th.
And city crews are going to be out filling potholes tomorrow. It's part of their annual spring blitz. 36 crews will be out on expressways, major roads, and neighborhood streets to complete the state of good repair work. They're going to work from 6:30 in the morning until 6:30 in the evening to resolve as many 311 service requests as possible. Priority areas include King Street, Etobicoke North, Scarborough North, and the northwest area of North York. Residents are asked to give the crews plenty of space and expect minor delays.
Toronto Mayor Olivia Chow kicked off the city's annual spring cleanup weekend, asking residents to pitch in to make the city a more beautiful place.
We know that after winter, there is always litter. Yep, a lot of them. All across the city, coffee cups, plastic bottles, napkins, other litter make our enjoyment of parks and other public space just not quite right.
Community volunteers as well as city staff are going to be out this weekend cleaning up the city's parks, beaches, and streets. Last year, city trucks carried away 977 metric tons of litter in the spring cleanup. There's also going to be street vacuumers out, and as well as crews cleaning up graffiti and removing abandoned bicycles.
All right, let's talk about a story a lot of Leaf fans are keeping their eyes on. The Toronto Maple Leafs kick off another playoff run tomorrow night against one of their rivals, the Boston Bruins.
Yeah, Toronto finished third in the Atlantic Division with 102 points, 7 points back of the Boston Bruins, who finished second. Toronto and Boston met in the playoffs in 2018. That's when the Leafs lost in 7 games, as well as in 2013 when the Leafs blew a 4-1 lead in Game 7. Puck drop tomorrow night is at 8 o'clock.
This is a whole new start of the season. Being an ex-player, this doesn't matter what the pre-games were, what the regular season was, how the season ended. This is a whole new season starting tomorrow, and I think the team will be ready. I think we're built better this year than we've been built before, and we just have to play our game, stay patient, don't give them the goals, and I think we'll be fine.
The one thing that people aren't talking about is everyone talks about the Leafs and all the pressure they're under. What about the Boston Bruins? They've won more games the last 3 years than any other team in hockey. They have one playoff series win. They got upset last year. They haven't won in almost 15 years as well. I know the Maple Leafs have the pressure, 1967, all of that. But on the other side, that's another hockey team that's got a lot of talent that hasn't got it done in the playoffs as well. That's the same thing we say about the Maple Leafs. So there's a lot of pressure on the Bruins as well.
They're a different team for sure. They're not the big bad Bruins anymore. And I think this year we have, with our offense, as long as it stays true to who they've been, I think we definitely could take them down.
Probably Brad Marchand. He's a big dude. He can lay some hits, and hopefully we'll win.
Maple Leaf Square will host a viewing and tailgate party tomorrow night. There will also be giveaways, activations, and special guests. It's always a good time in the square. Passes, they do have to be booked through the Maple Leafs app. They'll become available at 1 p.m. today, so in less than an hour. Gates to the square will open 2 hours ahead of puck drop.
And all aboard the playoff train, the Maple Leafs and Metrolinx, they've revealed a one-of-a-kind fan experience for select trains and stations. So for the duration of the Leafs playoff run, the Go Leafs Go train is going to provide fans on the Lakeshore West and East lines a chance to win surprise giveaways, win playoff-themed prizes, and enjoy special guest appearances. Certain train stations will also host pre-ride rallies and giving fans a taste of Maple Leafs tailgate. Details of these festivities will be available closer to game time.
Well, there will hopefully soon be an extremely cute and rare new addition or additions to the Toronto Zoo. The zoo's 2 snow leopards successfully mated, and Gita is now an expectant mother. Father Pemba was only recently brought to Toronto as part of a recommendation from the snow leopard species survival plan. The pair were introduced in February, and it was apparently love at first sight. The birth is expected sometime in May, but zoo officials warn first-time pregnancies can be challenging and there could be medical complications.
And coming up next on CP24 Live at noon, it is the first full day of deliberations for the jury in the trial of Umar Zameer. We're going to take a look at that and speak with a criminal defense lawyer after the break.
Welcome back. A jury is deliberating the fate of a man accused of fatally running over a Toronto police officer. Umar Zameer has pleaded not guilty to first-degree murder in the July 2021 death of Detective Constable Jeffrey Northrup. And for a closer look at this trial and deliberations, which continue today, we're joined live by Lindsay Broad, criminal defense lawyer and partner at Daniel Brown Law. Lindsay, thanks so much for joining us. It's good to have you on. Something really interesting happened in court yesterday. As Justice Molloy was instructing the jury, she told them to watch for possible collusion between the police officer's testimony. She said that there was no evidence that fully supports the Crown's theory here. How rare is that? And what do you make of her instructions?
Yeah, thanks for having me. Either way, you know, this is an incredibly tragic case. The question for the jury here really is whether, in addition to being a tragic situation, what happened here is also a crime. So what I understand the judge told the jury yesterday is that they need to be alive to the fact that the 3 police officers who testified, their story is all very similar, but their story doesn't jive with the evidence that the jury also heard from 2 different accident reconstructionist experts. So the defense and the prosecution called an accident reconstructionist expert who testified that Officer Northrup was lying on the ground when Mr. Zameer ran him over with his car. Now, that's very different from what the three officers testified to, which was that Officer Northrup was in front of the car with his hands up, identifying himself as a police officer. So when the trial judge is explaining to the jury that the physical evidence in the case doesn't back up what the officers are saying, that's what she's talking about.
So what do you think the judge is trying to do when she says, look, there's no evidence to support a case against Umar Zameer?
What I think the judge is saying isn't necessarily that there's no evidence to support a case against him per se, but that the evidence with respect to whether this was a murder is perhaps not there. So a trial judge has an obligation to instruct the jury about the legal principles the jury must apply. And it also has the judge has the obligation to go over the key pieces of evidence and make the connection between the law and the evidence for the jury so that the jury can decide what happened in the case. And so in order for the prosecution to demonstrate to the jury, prove its theory that this is a first-degree murder, the prosecution has to show that Mr. Zameer intentionally ran over Officer Northrup while knowing that he was a police officer. And on the prosecution's theory, Mr. Zameer would have known he was a police officer and would have known he was running him over intentionally because he was standing in front of his car with his hands up, identifying himself as a police officer. And now what the trial judge is saying to the jury is the other evidence, the physical evidence in the case really doesn't bear that out. And so we can imagine that the jury, with that instruction, may well have a very difficult time accepting the prosecution's theory with respect to first-degree murder.
Right. It's always hard to tell what a jury is going to come back with, but it does have four options to consider here. Was this first-degree murder, second-degree manslaughter, or is Umar Zameer simply not guilty? Which do you think is more likely?
It's really difficult to say. You know, a jury, you're correct that the jury can make a decision based on any of the four options that you had listed. The defense theory is that this was really just a tragic accident. And I believe in his closing submissions, the defense lawyer said that the jury shouldn't compound a tragic accident with an injustice. And so if the jury is with the defense, they may well conclude that Mr. Zameer was genuinely fearful for his safety and his family's safety and acquit him of all the charges.
Right. So the jury's now come back with a question for the judge that's being debated in the courts this morning. That's not uncommon. How long do you think deliberations could take here, Lindsay?
That's so hard to say. Sometimes juries take hours, days, or weeks, and so it really just depends. They have a lot of evidence to consider. In this case, we know that juries take their role very seriously. This was a lengthy trial. It was a 5-week trial, 5-6-week trial with a lot of evidence that was presented, and we can be sure that they're reviewing all of it very closely.
Lindsay Board, criminal defense lawyer and partner at Daniel Brown Law. Thanks so much for your perspective on this. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Right now it's 12:19, 8 degrees. Coming up next on CP24 Live at noon, thousands of hospital workers, they're getting a raise, and we're going to talk to the head of one of the unions. That's next. 65,000 hospital workers in Ontario will receive a 6% wage increase over the next 2 years. This is after a new deal was reached between the unions and the Ontario Hospital Association. And right now, we're joined live by Michael Hurley, president of CUPE's Ontario Council of Hospital Unions. Michael, first off, what does this mean for these workers?
Well, they'll receive a 3% wage increase as of September 23 and another one September 24. They'll see their evening premiums and their weekend premiums, their night premiums increase. There's significant improvements to their benefits, and you know there are other features to this agreement. And I think what it'll do is lift the spirits of people who have had a hard time over the last several years. First with the pandemic, and then with the significant workload crisis in the hospitals.
Okay, right there, Michael, draw the correlation between morale and the actual level of service that people will receive in hospitals.
Well, there's 30,000 vacancies in Ontario hospitals for staff, and of course we already had the fewest staff and the fewest beds to population of any province in Canada. So, this hospital system has been swamped by an aging and growing population, and the effect of that, is a difficulty the public experiences with access, quality of care problems, of course, and for the workforce, incredibly difficult workloads and particularly challenging during the pandemic. So people have been leaving, and what contract resolutions like this one do is encourage people by saying they're you are valued, and you will see some improvements in your wages and other areas. Hang in there.
And what about the 6.25% retroactive wage increase and also Bill 124?
Well, I mean, Bill 124 was a horrible problem, not just for us, of course, but for all people in the public sector, because it coincided with two significant events. Obviously, one was the pandemic. So you have people really putting themselves out, and in some cases, like 17 healthcare workers in Ontario died during the pandemic on the job. You've got incredible levels of sacrifice and heroism, and then you've also got a government which is limiting wages at a time when inflation is soaring. That wasn't just a problem for us, but when Bill 124 was struck down by the courts, we were able then to achieve some fairly significant compensation, which helped, I think, to restore morale. And this collective agreement will continue that trend.
Michael, what are some of the direct conversations that you've had with members about this wage increase?
Well, I think people are pleased. They were hopeful that what happened in their last collective agreement, which was a positive one for them, wasn't a one-off. They were hoping that a trend would continue that would see, an improvement for them in some of their basic conditions. In our case, we've been trying to catch up to standards set by the Ontario Nurses Association. We've achieved that in these areas of benefits and premiums, and I think people are very pleased about that, and they feel recognized and valued for that. And, I think that's a positive thing.
And Michael, when it comes to the quality of care that patients receive and also the protection for these employees, what's next?
Well, I mean, we will be campaigning over the summer because, we have a significant crisis at the hospitals continuing with respect to the staff shortages and the impact that has in terms of the closure of services, particularly emergency services, and particularly in smaller communities. But you feel the impact in the Greater Toronto Area significantly. And so we'll be continuing to press the government for additional resources, for more beds and more staff, because this hospital system can't cope really with the wave of people it's trying to process. And this is a relatively short-term problem, but it's a problem that needs to be addressed, or the public will suffer, the patients will suffer, and we're going to do everything we can to try to make that not the reality.
Okay. Michael Hurley, president of CUPE's Ontario Council of Hospital Unions. Thank you for your time.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Coming up next on CP24 Live at Noon, we're live at the University Avenue Courthouse where the jury is deliberating in the Umar Zameer trial. Stay with us for the latest updates.
Here's a live look at the University Avenue Courthouse, as this is the first full day of deliberations for the jury in the Umar Zameer trial, the man accused of killing a Toronto police officer. We're going to tell you the questions the jurors have been asking today.
65,000 hospital workers in Ontario will receive a 6% wage increase over the next 2 years. This after a new deal was reached between the unions and the Ontario Hospital Association.
And the Leafs are getting ready to take on the Bruins tomorrow in Boston in Game 1 of Round 1 of the NHL playoffs. We're going to tell you how the city's getting ready.
Good afternoon and welcome to CP24 Live at Noon. I'm Lena Lattifat.
And I'm Bakari Savage. The jury in the Umar Zameer murder trial, they're continuing to deliberate this morning for its first full day.
CP24's Courtney Heels is in front of the courthouse with the very latest on this. Courtney, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Lena and Bakari. There is a lot for this jury to consider while deciding the fate of Umar Zameer, who is accused of first-degree murder in the death of Detective Constable Jeffrey Northrup. They are going over 5 weeks of testimony, of evidence, and they basically got together about 5:30 yesterday. That's when the deliberations began. Shortly after, they had a question for the judge. That question raised before the court earlier this morning. We'll go over some of the questions for you. Did Zameer know there was a risk Northrup was a cop and proceeded despite that? And was Zameer aware there were indications Northrup was a police officer but chose to ignore them? This has been the big question throughout the course of this trial. Was Umar Zameer aware that Detective Constable Northrup and his partner were officers when they approached that vehicle in the underground parking garage? The Crown has argued that Zameer would have known that they were officers because they made it aware, saying that they had badges around their neck, also saying they were shouting and in front of the vehicle shouting police, police. What we've heard from the defense, they say this was a tragic accident, also saying that Zameer did not know the two individuals were police officers, saying that Zameer was afraid, felt that he and his family were under threat when they were approached by the two officers underground, again, not knowing they were police officers. So again, the jury has so much to consider here. 4 different verdicts are possibilities. We talked to Joseph Newberger. He's a criminal defense lawyer. He has nothing to do with this case, but he's been sharing his perspective with us. Here's what he has to say about how difficult this decision is going to be for the jury.
The challenge, though, is for the jury. He was acting out of fear. His state of mind at the time was that he was in fear, not knowing that these were police officers, feeling that he was under attack. He had just seen an individual stabbed. Their mind was impacted by what had happened in London, Ontario previously. So his state of mind was a significant factor here. So he wasn't necessarily applying his own mind to his exact maneuvers because he was in a state of panic and fear. So you have to be careful with that type of analysis.
So I mentioned 4 possible verdicts in this case: first-degree murder, second-degree murder, manslaughter, or not guilty. In order for the jury to reach a verdict of first or second-degree murder really depends on whether the jurors believe beyond a reasonable doubt that Zameer knew Northrup was, in fact, a police officer. So we are standing by live at the University Avenue Courthouse. It has been quiet over the last hour or so. We'll wait to see if there are perhaps any further questions from the jury or if they reach a verdict on this case later today. Lena, Bakari, over to you guys.
This could be a really long deliberation process, or it could be really short. We'll have to wait and see. Courtney Hill's reporting live. A warning now, some viewers may find the following video disturbing.
Okay, York Regional Police, they've released a video of multiple arrests of a takedown of carjacking suspects.
The takedown happened on April 13th when York Regional Police located a reportedly stolen Acura with 3 suspects inside. Officers used flashbangs. That's a distraction device that produces a flash of light and loud noises. The suspects attempted to flee on foot, tossing a loaded firearm. Police say the Acura had been used as a getaway car in a previous violent carjacking attempt in York Region, as well as in a carjacking in Toronto, in which suspects were charged. 18-year-old Posher Williams and 2 teen boys are facing a number of firearm and property offenses.
And the first people who pick up the phone when someone calls 911, they're being honored this week. It's National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week. The occasion is it's meant to recognize the work done by those who handle calls for police, fire, and paramedics. The week has a special significance in Peel. This is where the region's 911 communication center is rolling out a new system meant to make operators more efficient.
The technology has twofold. One is it allows us to discern whether, in a more efficient format, if a call is an emergency or it's a non-emergency. Before, anybody could call 911, even if it was just, we've had some misuse calls, but if it technically wasn't an emergency. The new technology allows us to discern that, which is actually improving our speed of handling calls. So that's one thing. And the second piece, again, as I mentioned, is to navigate the misuse calls.
Peel Police say that the region's communication center is the second biggest in Canada and is one of the busiest in North America.
Well, the latest installment of the Canada Child Benefit payments are landing in the pockets of eligible families today.
The monthly payments, they're based on a family's net income and how many children they have. The federal program has been to assist low, middle-income families. Applicants can receive up to $619 a month for younger children, then $6 and up to $522 for kids between 6 and 17 years old. The benefit was recently increased to keep up with inflation and the cost of living. The next payment date is set for May 17th.
A new report suggests the average price of a home in Toronto could hit $2 million within a decade. Data analysis by Zoocasa shows average home prices in 43% of the city's neighborhoods eclipsed the $2 million mark over the past 2 years. It expects that figure to become the average selling price by 2034. However, the report says that mark could be reached even faster if home prices increase as interest rates decline. Toronto Regional Real Estate Board President Jennifer Pierce joined CP24 Breakfast with more on the current market and what could be done to make homes more affordable.
We really need council to look at more innovative ways, different ideas for building homes, maybe more density close to public transit, looking for that missing middle, to build more homes that for multifamilies, laneway housing, different ways to find more supply and more places to put people.
A recent report from the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation found that new home starts, or the number of homes starting construction, those were nowhere near reaching the target set by both the federal and provincial governments.
Well, Toronto Mayor Olivia Chow kicked off the city's annual Spring Cleanup Day, asking residents to pitch in to make the city a more beautiful place.
Every year, we pull up our sleeve to pick up that litter. It's about time for spring cleaning. Clean Toronto Together brings together thousands of Torontonians to help clean up litters in parks and public spaces. This weekend, I encourage community groups, businesses, schools, fellow councillors, city manager, and individuals to show up and show our city some love.
Community volunteers as well as city staff will be out this weekend cleaning up the city's parks, beaches, and streets. Last year, city trucks carried away 977 metric tons of litter in the spring cleanup. There will be street vacuumers out and about as well as crews cleaning up graffiti and removing abandoned bicycles.
And city crews will be out filling potholes tomorrow in their annual Spring Blitz. 36 crews will be out on expressways, major roads, and neighborhood streets to complete the state of good repair work. They'll work from 6:30 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. tomorrow to resolve as many 311 service requests as possible. Priority areas include King Street, Etobicoke North, Scarborough North, and the northwest area of North York. Residents are asked to give the crews plenty of space and expect minor delays.
And there's a subway closure for TTC riders to keep in mind this weekend. Trains will not be running between Woodbine and Kennedy stations on Line 2 tomorrow and Sunday. And crews are going to be performing track work. Shuttle buses will be operating. Regular service is expected to resume Monday morning. And a heads up for riders on the Lakeshore West GO train line tomorrow and Sunday. Trains will run on a modified hourly schedule. This is to accommodate ongoing track work. Also, some Lakeshore East trains may not continue west past Union Station. Regular service will return on Monday.
And there will hopefully soon be an extremely cute and rare new addition or additions to the Toronto Zoo. The zoo's 2 snow leopards successfully mated, and Gita is now an expectant mother. Father Pemba was only recently brought to Toronto as part of a recommendation from the Snow Leopard Species Survival Plan. The pair were introduced in February, and it was love at first sight. The birth is expected sometime in May. But zoo officials warn first-time pregnancies can be challenging and there could be medical complications.
Tomorrow, Leafs fans are going to be organizing how and when they take in the game. So tomorrow's series against Boston, this is going to mark the 8th straight playoff appearance for the Leafs. And that's the longest streak of playoff appearances in 43 years. Toronto and Boston met in the playoffs in 2018. That's when the Leafs lost in 7 games. As well as in 2013 when the Leafs blew a 4-1 lead in Game 7. So puck drop tomorrow night is at 8.
This is the best time for our team. Our team is basically built for trying to do it now. Our best players are at the right age. They're not rookies, they're not old, and this is their time. So it's their time to go out and grab it and have some fun with this playoff run.
They can do it. They beat Tampa last year. Ilya Samsonov got it done. These guys have been together for 7 or 8 years. They're not going to be afraid. Also, the roster, they changed it a little bit at the deadline and in the offseason. This is a tougher team, a stronger team. They were, I think, 2nd or 3rd in the NHL in hits. They're not going to be afraid of the Boston Bruins. They just have to, and I'm sorry to go cliche, they just have to relax and play their game. They have more talent than Boston. It's just Boston is better in net and I would say first pair defense. Beyond that, Toronto can stack up.
It's unbelievable. I couldn't recommend it to anybody more to come down here. Please come down here and enjoy, have a good, safe family time and cheer on our team. Like, let's go. We need a cup this year.
Last year, I got to stay up when we got 2nd round, and hopefully that can carry on to this year.
Well, Maple Leaf Square is going to be hosting a viewing and tailgate party tomorrow night. There will also be giveaways, activations, and special guests. Passes are free, but you have to book through the Maple Leafs app. They're going to become available at 1 p.m. today. The gates to the square will open about 2 hours ahead of puck drop.
And all aboard the playoff train, the Maple Leafs and Metrolinx have revealed a one-of-a-kind fan experience for select trains and stations for the duration of the Leafs playoff run. The Go Leafs Go train will provide fans on the Lakeshore West and East lines a chance to win surprise giveaways, win playoff-themed prizes, and enjoy special guest appearances. Certain train stations will also host pre-ride rallies, giving fans the taste of the Maple Leafs tailgate. Details of the festivities will be available closer to game time.
Okay, it's 12:43, 8 degrees, feeling like 7 out there. I think the rain's tapering off, but we got to have a look at the roads with Adjoa Insiaya. Adj, look at that purple.
Yeah, you love the purple. It's royal, right? If you're making your way out, Bakari, you guys are making your way out, but if you're a commuter on the roadways, we were dealing with a lot of rain coming down. The rain actually has subsided, and so have problems. We had some issues that were slowing down the commute this afternoon on the westbound lanes of the 401. They were happening in the Express in McCowan. It was the 2 left lanes blocked with a long-standing stalled transport truck. It cleared moments ago, so this is the reason why you're still seeing a backlog. East 401 delays 427 all the way out towards about the 400. Had to look at the Don Valley Parkway. Also problems came and went. Northbound DVP north of Don Mills was a collision in the right lane. It's out of the way, and it's going to be like this on the westbound Gardner. Very, very slow as you head from Cherry Street already all the way out to Dufferin. Lane restrictions for the long-term road work even busy as you make your way into the downtown core because of the long-term road work. Outside of camera view on the westbound 403 on the on-ramp from southbound Waterdown Road. The right lane of that ramp is blocked with a stall in Burlington. I'll send it back to you.
The CP24 traffic report is brought to you by CapitalDirect.ca.
Coming up next on CP24 Live at noon, we'll talk to Josie Dye about Taylor Swift's major surprise for fans overnight, a secret double album.
The cherry blossoms in Hyde Park are expected to reach peak bloom real soon.
And for more on this, we're joined live by Sarah Street, the executive director at Hyde Park Nature Center. Sarah, thanks so much for joining us. We can see the cherry blossoms behind you. Tell us more about the blooming period, and when do you think we'll see peak bloom?
Yeah, so thank you for having us. And yeah, as you can see behind me, the trees right now are in what's called stage 5, which is puffy white. And so the blossoms are just getting ready to open. And we've begun the blooming period, which is when 20% of the blossoms are open in Hyde Park. And we're still on target for peak bloom to begin on Monday. And that's when 70% of the blossoms are open.
Okay, so Monday until when is the best time to come and see the cherry blossoms at their best?
Yeah, so peak bloom can last anywhere from 4 to 10 days. So we're anticipating it's at least going to last a week here in Hyde Park, given the weather forecast. So all next week, Monday through Saturday and Sunday.
And you know, almost everybody wants a picture with the cherry blossoms. Makes for such a great shot, right? You mentioned that the peak bloom period is about 4 to 10 days. Why so short, Sarah?
Well, because nature is difficult to predict and also unpredictable, right? You've got weather conditions that can be anywhere from very cold and maybe steady, which would be great for the bloom. Or if we get some really warm, sunny weather, the blossoms will start to fall off the trees faster.
Okay, so for a lot of people wanting to come and take photos for, social media or whatever, what is your suggestion to them when coming to the park and, getting close to the trees or things like that?
Of course. We always suggest that people come and have a respectful visit in Hyde Park. The important things are to remember not to touch the branches. We know you want that perfect selfie, but remembering not to pull on the branches or pluck any of the flowers. Making sure that you're watching where you're walking, because turtle hatchlings are also starting to come out at this time of year, and they're really small as a quarter. It can be hard to see. So just making sure that you have a respectful visit while you're in High Park and getting to see the blossoms and this ephemeral experience.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. What I love is that there's a real story here, a lot of history behind these stunning sakura trees.
Yeah, that's right. In 1959, there was a gift from Japan to Toronto, and there were all these beautiful trees that were gifted, and there's been more gifts since then that have just made this experience possible.
Okay, Sarah Street, Executive Director at the High Park Nature Center. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Well, Taylor Swift released her 11th album titled The Tortured Poets Department at midnight, and then she surprised fans at 2 a.m. by dropping a second installment.
And for more on this, we're joined live by Josie Dye, afternoon host, Chum 104.5. Okay, Josie, this was a surprise album. It is also a little provocative. What do you think?
Oh, it's great. Well, here's the first thing I want to say is don't forget, this is day one. And I say this because we all have so many opinions, but let the music sit with you a bit. I mean, honestly, listen to it over and over. It takes about 20 spins of a song for you to really understand what you're feeling. But yeah, there's so much to talk about and there's so much material. I mean, the big news is that we all thought the album was leaked and everyone was, worried about listening to it or not listening to it. Well, for the people who didn't listen, they got the experience of the second drop at 2 a.m. And I'm so glad that people were able to experience that in real time.
I want to talk about that apparent leak because that really made headlines and it led to a social media frenzy. As you noted, a lot of fans were divided. Should we listen? Should we wait? How frustrating would that be for an artist?
Absolutely frustrating. I mean, think about the amount of people that have worked on this album, and Taylor orchestrated the entire thing. This is her art. She had a plan, and people, they think that, it's music. It's not just music. There's a rollout. There's social media rollout. I'm sure there's billboards. There's so many things that are involved in this release. And when someone steals it, and that's really what they're doing, and leaks it online, first of all, you don't even know if it's AI or if it's Taylor. So it has to be incredibly frustrating for any artist when music is leaked.
Okay, Josie, there's been a lot of talk that one of Taylor's songs is about Kim Kardashian. So already tons of speculation about the meaning behind some of those songs, some, lyrics that we were talking about, maybe a little bit provocative.
Yeah, well, this is the thing about the album is if you've listened to the album, you know that she's always been one to speak in metaphors or sing in metaphors. But this album, there's none of that. She is telling you what she wants to tell you. It's like, this is finally her speaking. So many times in the past, she hasn't been able to comment on stories in the news. But if you look at the tracks, you look at her ex, Joe, she has an entire song about their breakup. And anyone who has gone through a horrible breakup, you feel it. You know she tried. She tried so hard. As to Kim Kardashian, I mean, she's wanted to say it. Now she doesn't care. This is her mature album. She's finally able to say what she wants to say.
Hey, Josie. Look at what we have right here.
Can you see ours?
Oh, nice.
Hot off the presses. James just brought this up to us just in time. So
it's a pretty cool cover, I have to say. What did you think of that?
You know what, guys? I'm usually in the studio with you. I wish I was there. Unfortunately, I was home listening to the album all morning. But if I was there, I would steal it for an hour and then give it back to you.
Okay.
We know that you would.
Yeah.
Really quickly, I do want to ask you, Josie, Taylor Swift's story, her trajectory has been nothing short of phenomenal. She started off as a country artist, and she continues to push the envelope. What do you make of the artist that she's becoming?
I mean, this is her growing. And I hate to look at stats because that's what everyone does. But I mean, today another record was broken in less than 12 hours. She broke the Spotify record, the most streamed album in a single day. And what I love about this album is it's not all radio hits. She's got her fans now, and she's going to let her fans grow with her like so many artists that from before her time. So I really love this.
Okay, so Josie, we're talking about like a double album release. Okay, I might be showing my age, but I don't think I've ever heard of anything like that before.
It happens all the time. It does happen,
Really?
and maybe not in pop music,
Okay.
not as often. But I'm trying to remember some artists. I mean, I come from the alternative world, so the Foo Fighters have done it all. They do it. They had an acoustic and an electric album. But the thing about it is the surprise element, right? We weren't expecting it. That was the big thing. Is that well, we're getting more music. So that was the cool part.
I don't even know how our executive producer got his hands on one of these, because I imagine they're very popular. Do you expect Taylor to break some more records? I mean, that's an obvious yes, right? That's a given.
Within hours, she will be breaking some records. In fact, there is a record, and I'm trying to think of it off the top of my head here, but I know that Jay-Z holds, I think, the #1 streaming, I know what it is. He has the most streamed #1s on Spotify, and she's close to breaking that, and I think in the next couple of days, she will break it.
Okay, Josie Dye, thanks so much for breaking this down for us. Happy listening. And like you said, you just got to sit with it, let it process, right, and see. Give it some time.
Exactly.
Yeah, thanks, Josie. And thank you for watching CP24 Live at Noon.